But in this age right now, a very, very difficult thing to try to institute these systems. We're reading ancient times here. The best thing that we can do right now is to understand the benefits of the Varnashram Dharma, and wherever possible, encourage in that direction. But we should understand it's not the main mercy for this age. The main focus is the hearing and the chanting and the fixing the mind on Krishna and devotional service wherever you're situated. So, but it's to have knowledge of how Krishna works and how the systems are there, we can understand how the systems aren't functioning. And that can help us to transcend even more when we understand what's missing and what's not functioning the way it should be. So let's hear about how it really works. And we can get a clearer picture of what we're actually dealing with on a day-to-day basis in the world, which only increases our appreciation of how simple the Lord has made it by giving us all his potencies just in the holy name. It's like a direct connection. Such great mercy. Okay, so he's left this responsibility to his sons to see that the kingdom is managing nicely. It is significant that when Maharaj Prachinabarhi was convinced of the goal of life through the instructions of Narada, he did not wait even a moment to see his sons return, but left immediately. There were many things to be done upon the return of his sons, but he simply left them a message. He knew what his prime duty was. He simply left instructions for his son, went off for the purpose of spiritual advancement. This is the system of Vedic civilization. That is very interesting, because once he understood what the real priority was, what the goal of it all was, he was no longer engaged in it. He understood the highest priority was to devote oneself completely to becoming Krishna conscious. And for him, he had that opportunity because sons could take up the task. But he didn't even wait. He just left them a message. Wow, that's what happens after hearing from a pure devotee. Is the actual, or the most important thing in life becomes obvious. He was able to give up everything, a kingdom now. You know, kings, they've got it pretty good materially. The eating part, the mating part, the royal luxury, all the attention, telling everybody what to do, the entertainment. I mean, it's pretty exciting, you know. There's a lot of social life there. And the king he's it, you know. He's the life of every party, the king. I mean, whatever it is, he's got the taxes, he's got the tax money, he's got the big house on the hill, you know. He's got it all, you know. He just dropped it all. That's it. Done. See ya. I'm going to Krishna. Now, there's other examples of kings who maintained their royal position and kept their Krishna consciousness also. So again, it's an individual basis. But here, in this, studying this and hearing about this particular devotee and what happened in his life, this is what happened with him. So this happens too. He doesn't give it all up and go. Sridhar Swami informs us that Kapila Ashram is located at the confluence of the Ganges and the Bay of Bengal, a place now known as Gangasagara. This place is still famous as a place of pilgrimage, and many millions of people gather there every year on the day of Makara Sankranti and take bath. It is called Kapila Ashram because of Lord Kapila's living there to perform his austerities and penance. Lord Kapila propounded the Sankhya system of philosophy. A couple more verses here. 82. Having undergone austerities and penances at Kapila Ashram, King Prachinabarhi attained full liberation from all material designations. He constantly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord and attained a spiritual position qualitatively equal to that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is a special significance in the words Tat Samyatam Agat. The king attained the position of possessing the same status or the same form as that of the Lord. This definitely proves that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always a person. In his impersonal feature, he is the rays of his transcendental body. When a living entity attains spiritual perfection, he also attains the same type of body, known as Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. This spiritual body never mixes with the material elements. Although in conditional life, the living entity is surrounded by material elements, he remains aloof from them. In other words, the living entity can be liberated from the material condition at any moment, provided he wishes to do so. It's all based on desire. And by hearing about Krishna from the pure devotees, his representatives, then the desire to go to Krishna, to be with Krishna, to serve Krishna, to remember Krishna, become conscious of Krishna, develops. It's called the seed of bhakti, seed of devotion. It's planted in that way. Become liberated from identifying with the material elements. The only reason we're identifying with the material elements is the desire to enjoy them as they're in the mind. But when that desire to enjoy changes because of experiencing a higher taste, become liberated from even considering the material elements as something that could even be enjoyed. No interest. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Daivye gunamayi, mama maya dharatyaya, mamevaye prapadyante, mayamitam tarantite. As soon as the living entity engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he immediately attains freedom from all material conditions. In the material state, the living entity is on the Jiva Buddha platform, but when he renders devotional service to the Lord, he's elevated to the Brahmabhuta platform. On the Brahmabhuta platform, the living entity is liberated from material bondage. He engages in the service of the Lord. In this verse, the word dhira is sometimes read as vira. Actually, there's not very much difference. The word dhira means sober, and vira means hero. One who is struggling against Maya is a hero. And one who is sober enough to understand his position is a dhira. Without becoming sober or heroic, you cannot attain spiritual salvation. So Maitreya speaking now says, "My dear Vidura, one who hears this narration concerning the understanding of the living entity's spiritual existence, as described by the great sage Narada, or who relates it to others, will be liberated from the bodily conception of life." Jai. This material creation is the spirit soul's dream. Actually, all existence in the material world is a dream of Mahavishnu. It's Krishna's dream. The whole thing is Krishna's dream. As the Brahma Samhita describes, this material world is created by the dreaming of Mahavishnu. It's created in the mind of the Lord, because that's where dreams are. It's created in the Lord's mind. He's asleep and he's dreaming. This is his dream. The real factual platform is the spiritual world. But when the spirit soul wants to imitate the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is put into this dreamland of material creation. Wow. After being in contact with the material modes of nature, the living entity develops the subtle and gross bodies. When the living entity is fortunate enough to associate with Narada Muni or his servants, he's liberated from this dreamland of material creation and the bodily conception of life. This narration, spoken by the great sage Narada, is full of the transcendental fame of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, this narration, when described, certainly sanctifies this material world. It purifies the heart of the living entity and helps him attain his spiritual identity. One who relates this transcendental narration will be liberated from all material bondage and will no longer have to wander within this material world. In case you were wondering why I'm making this video, let me read that again. One who relates this transcendental narration will be liberated from all material bondage and will no longer have to wander within this material world. That sounds good to me. That sounds good. That also goes for one who hears. Because in the previous verse, one who hears this narration concerning the understanding of a living entity's spiritual existence will be liberated from the bodily conception of life. That's how transcendental or spiritual knowledge is transmitted by hearing and chanting. And this is narrating the conversation that took place many thousands of years ago, and that conversation was relating the conversation previous. And it originated from a pure devotee of the Lord, Narada. And that's how it works. That's the cyclic succession. Purport by Prabhupada. As indicated in verse 79, Narada advised King Prachinabarhi to take to devotional service rather than waste time performing ritualistic ceremonies and fruitive activities. The vivid descriptions of the subtle and gross bodies in this chapter are most scientific. Because they're given by the great sage Narada, they are authoritative. Because these narrations are full of the glory of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they constitute the most effective process for the purification of the mind. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirmed, Chaito Darpana Marjanam, the more we talk of Krishna, thinking of Krishna, and preach for Krishna, the more we become purified. This means we no longer have to accept hallucinatory, gross, and subtle body, but instead attain our spiritual identity. One who tries to understand this instructive spiritual knowledge is delivered from this ocean of nescience. The word Paramestyam is very significant in this connection. Paramestyam is also called Brahmaloka. It's the planet on which Lord Brahma lives. The inhabitants of Brahmaloka always discuss such narrations so that after the annihilation of the material world, they can be directly transferred to the spiritual world. One who is transferred to the spiritual world does not have to go up and down within this material world. Sometimes spiritual activities are also called Paramestyam. That's interesting. It's the highest planet in the creation. And this is what they're doing. They're discussing these topics of Krishna with the understanding that when the creation is through, then they can go back to the spiritual world. Interesting. Okay, let's, we're almost at the end of the chapter. Let's go. Text 85. The allegory of King Puranjana described herein, according to authority, was heard by me from my spiritual master. This is Maitreya speaking. And it is full of spiritual knowledge. If one can understand the purpose of this allegory, he will certainly be relieved from the bodily conception and will clearly understand life after death. Although one may not understand what transmigration of the soul actually is, one can fully understand it by studying this narration. The word striya, meaning along with the wife, is significant. The male and female living together constitute the sum and substance of material existence. The attraction between male and female in this material world is very strong. In all species of life, the attraction between male and female is the basic principle of existence. The same principle of intermingling is also in human society, but it's in a regulated form. Material existence means living together as male and female and being attracted by one another. However, when one fully understands spiritual life, his attraction for the opposite sex is completely vanquished. By such attraction, one becomes overly attached to the material world. It's a hard knot within the heart. Everyone comes to this material world attracted to sense gratification. And the hard knot of sense gratification is the attraction between male and female. By this attraction, one becomes overly attached to the material world in terms of home, land, children, friends, money, and so forth. Thus, one becomes entangled in the bodily conception, I, mine. However, if one understands the story of King Purāṇa and understands how by sexual attraction Purāṇa became a female in his next life, one will also understand the process of transmigration. There's some special notes here. Text 1a and 2a, 1b, and 2b. And Prabhupada considers them significant, so we'll read them. Special note, according to Vyāsadeva Tirtha, who belongs to the Madhvacharya Sampradaya, the first two of the following verses appear after verse 45 of this chapter, and the remaining two verses appear after verse 79. So, saying that these are missing verses. So let's see. A desire to maintain body, wife, and children is also observed in animal society. The animals have full intelligence to manage such affairs. If a human being is simply advanced in this respect, what is the difference between him and an animal? One should be very careful to understand that this human life is attained after many, many births in the evolutionary process. A learned man who gives up bodily conception of life, both gross and subtle, will, by the enlightenment of spiritual knowledge, become a prominent individual spirit soul, as the Supreme Lord is also. Purport. It is said that man is a rational animal, but from this verse we can also understand that rationality exists even in animal life. Unless there is rationality, how can an animal maintain its body by working so hard? That the animals are not rational is untrue. Their rationality, however, is not very advanced. In any case, we cannot deny them rationality. The point is that one should use one's reason to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for that is the perfection of life. Text 1b. If a living entity is developed in Krishna consciousness and is merciful to others, and if his spiritual knowledge of self-realization is perfect, he will immediately attain liberation from the bondage of material existence. In this verse, the words Daya Jiveshu, meaning mercy to other living entities, indicates that a living entity must be merciful to other living entities if he wishes to make progress in self-realization. This means he must preach this knowledge after perfecting it himself and understanding his own position as an eternal servant of Krishna. Preaching this is showing real mercy to living entities. Other types of humanitarian work may be temporarily beneficial for the body, but because a living entity is spirit soul, ultimately one can show him real mercy only by revealing knowledge of his spiritual existence. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Jiva Swarupaya Krishnera Nityadas. Every living entity is constitutionally a servant of Krishna. One should know this fact perfectly and preach it to the mass of people. If one realizes that he is an eternal servant of Krishna, but does not preach it, his realization is imperfect. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur therefore sings, "My dear mind, what kind of Vaishnava are you? Simply for false prestige and a material reputation, you're chanting the Hare Krishna mantra in a solitary place. In this way, people who do not preach are criticized. There are many Vaishnavas in Vrindavan who do not like preaching. Chiefly, they try to imitate Haridas Thakur. The actual result of their so-called chanting in a secluded place, however, is that they sleep and think of women and money. Similarly, one who simply engages in temple worship but does not see to the interests of the mass of people or cannot recognize devotees is called a Kanistha Adhikari, materialistic devotee." And the last verse in this chapter, text 2b. Everything happening within time, which consists of past, present, and future, is merely a dream. That is the secret understanding in all Vedic literature. Purport. Factually, all of material existence is only a dream. Thus, there is no question of past, present, and future. Persons who are addicted to karma kanda vichara, which means working for future happiness through fruitive activities, are also dreaming. Similarly, past happiness and present happiness are merely dreams. The actual reality is Krishna and service to Krishna, which can save us from the clutches of Maya. For the Lord says in the Gita, "Mam mevaye prapadyante, mayam etam taranti te." Those who surrender unto me can easily cross beyond my illusory energy. And that is the end of this chapter. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to all my spiritual masters. Hare Krishna.